is Chelsea, and this is Midwest Fright. Hi guys, welcome. First episode. Midwest Fright is a horror movie podcast where I talk about some of my favorite or least favorite films throughout the years. On today's episode, I'm going to discuss the 2005 film The Descent. One of my favorites. I love it so much. I've probably seen it 100 times since it released. It is 7.2 out of 10 stars on IMDb, which I rated it 8 out of 10. There were some issues, but no big deal. For 2005, it's pretty impressive. It does have I don't want to say a rare cast. That's probably not the right word, but it has a cast that they're not in a lot of things that I know of. So it has Shauna McDonald. She plays as Sarah. Natalie Mendoza plays Juno. Alex Reed plays as Beth. And Saskia Mulder plays as Rebecca. And Mayanna Buring is Sam, which Mayanna Buring is in The Witcher. She's in Doomsday, which is also directed by the same director. And she's in quite a few other things, but this was actually her first breakout role. Nora Jane Noon is Holly, and Oliver Milburn is Paul, and Molly Kale is Jessica. And all of the crawlers that are in this film were actually played by actors and not stunt people, which I thought was pretty cool because they wanted the crawlers to have their own type of personality. So this film was directed and written by Neil Marshall, and he's done a few of my favorite films. Dog Soldiers, Doomsday. Actually, he did the David Arbor Hellboy, the one that came out after the Ron Perlman one, the Guillermo del Toro one. I probably just butchered that name. Oh my God. Anyway, so this is one of probably my top 5, top 10 films. Honestly, I couldn't really tell you because there's just so many that I love. All right. So this film, I'll give you a little tidbit of it. A caving expedition goes horribly wrong as the explorers become trapped and ultimately pursued by a strange breed of predators. Nah, I could never go spelunking. Not only would my fat ass not make it through, but I could not. The fact that you're going deep into these crevices and these openings and you're like, am I going to get out? What's going to happen? And that's basically why I love this film, is because it gives you the feeling they did the claustrophobicness, I guess, so well. And in the film, I'll actually discuss it, where there's a quote that Rebecca says talking about, having a flight plan and you have to be careful because the dark's not really it's dark out there. And anyway, so this film, I'll give you some fun little facts about it. It was not filmed in the US at all. It was strictly filmed in Scotland and London, which was pretty cool. And some of the scenes were actually most of the scenes, all of them were filmed on set. They were they made the caves. They made these openings because it was way too dangerous to film in an actual cave. And I thought that was so cool. Some people have said they could tell when the rocks and things like that are fake. I personally couldn't tell. And I've seen this so many times. I mean, I could probably quote majority of it, but I guess I don't pay attention to those kinds of details. There's a couple of CGI scenes where you're like, oh, that's kind of rough. Those are the only ones I really noticed. So I'm not saying I'm a diehard movie buff fanatic. I enjoy it. And I just wanted to talk about some of the films that I loved. And this is one of them. All right. So we will get into this. Basically, the movie is also set up in the Appalachian, however you want to say it, whatever part you're from. It's set in those mountains around the North Carolinas. So opening scene, you see these 3 girls going whitewater rafting, and we're going to assume that they're best friends, girlfriends, because they're just having a blast. And at the end of the river, you see a man and a little girl who they're waving, and you're like, oh, okay, that must be one of their, spouses. And it is. So these characters, which will later be introduced in the film, are Sarah, Beth, and Juno. And at the end of the river, the husband and daughter is Sarah's. So everyone's super excited, blah, blah, blah. Once they get done, and they get out, you kind of notice there's some weird vibe going on with Sarah's husband and Juno. Nothing is said. It's just he's helping her like take her helmet off. Beth's kind of tidying up the boat and Sarah's talking to her daughter. But we as the viewer get a glimpse of that. And you're like, vibes are off. That's weird. So Sarah then leaves with her husband and daughter, and they're talking about the birthday party that she has coming up. Just fun stuff. And Paul's being quiet. So Sarah is like, hey, are you okay? You've been kind of distant. Like, what's going on? And you were just happy like 10 minutes ago while I was out there, going down the river. Well, he gets so distracted. He's staring at her. And as the viewer, we see a van coming in, oncoming with like these pipes on top of it. And they collide. It's implied that the pipes that go through the windshield kill Paul and their daughter, Jessica. So Sarah wakes up in the hospital after having an awful nightmare, which you kind of get the vibe at first that this is going to be like a supernatural type film because of this scene. She like wakes up. She goes in the hallway, the lights start flickering, and then it gets super dark, and she's running. Well, whenever she's running, that's when she wakes up and she's in Beth's arms. So I kind of see that also as like the world's closing in on her because she just lost her husband and her daughter. But Juno is also there at the hospital, and we just see the hallway scene. It pans out and they're all just crying. They're hysterical. So we know that this is it. Which is absolutely heartbreaking. I mean, that I could not imagine that tragedy. So we fast forward to about a year, and the next scene is Sarah and Beth are driving pretty much out in the wilderness. And one of my favorite things is while Beth's driving, she's like going through the radio and she's like, mud, blood, beer, or sweet Jesus. Yeah, that's pretty accurate. It's all you get on our radio stations. So especially out there in like Carolinas, out in the sticks, some wrong turn type stuff. There's no telling what you're going to hear. So while she's driving, there's signs for Chattooga National Park, which is fictional in the film, but it's actually based off of National Park in Georgia that has a place called Wind Cave. And some little fun facts, there's actually some caves there, like there's Ellison Cave, which is the 12th deepest and 42nd longest cave in the U.S., and it has 2 of the deepest cave drops. Bro, yeah. Why? Anyway, so we are still driving, and basically Beth's like, hey, we don't have to do this. Juna's shit, she hightailed out of there after Sarah lost her whole freaking family, basically, out there at Scotland. I think I said Switzerland earlier. My bad. But yeah, so Juno had just left, and she's like, we don't have to go do this. We can just turn back. We can go into town, chill out, whatever. But Sarah's like, no, I want to, because I feel like she just wants to feel some type of normalcy. She just wants to hang out with her girlfriends and just try to have a good time. So they meet up at the cabin, and we get introduced to Juno again. And that's where we meet Sam and Rebecca, who are sisters, and Holly, which is like Juno's new adventure buddy, whatever. But she's kind of cool. So they all go inside, and basically they're just shooting the shit. They're drinking, and they're talking about relationships, adventures. Excuse me. And Juno shows an old picture to them of Beth and Sarah whenever they first started, I guess, hanging out. And during this, Sarah says, love each day. Everyone's kind of quiet, and they're like, Okay. Like, cool. But that is something Paul used to say, love each day. So remember that, because it's gonna come back. It's gonna come back in a big way. So they all go to bed, and Sarah ends up having a nightmare. She hears a noise, and of course she goes to the window, because whenever you hear a noise, let's just go check it out. And a pipe shoots through it, which is a pretty good jump scare, especially if you've never seen this film. But spoiler alert, now you're going to be, not scared. But it's a pretty good scene. So it wakes her up. And something that I noticed on this watch through was she's like taking some type of medication. And it doesn't really focus on it, but you see the pill bottle sitting like on the nightstand. So it's like, is that some type of, anxiety medicine, or what is that? Because I have a theory kind of later on. It's a wild theory, which I'm not the only one that thinks this, but we'll come back to that. So next morning, Juno's jogging and she goes through and wakes everybody up. Rebecca is not having it. She's straight up hungover. She goes to Sam and Holly's room, and it gives you a type of like comedic relief, like Holly falls on the floor, and it just kind of like, you're just like, oh, this is a nice little girl. It's a girl type movie, like this is going to be fine. It takes a minute for this movie to pop off. So they end up taking 2 vehicles to Borum Caverns, which Holly calls a boredom caverns, and they may as well just put handrails and gift shops in. This is the cave that they're supposed to be going to. Remember that, Borum Caverns. The park at the end of the road, they park at the end of the road, and they have to hike pretty much the rest of the way. And you see Juno leaves this like guidebook in the glove box, and she kind of looks around. So what, why is she kind of, and she was being a little shady about it. She's looking around. She just puts this guidebook back in the glove box, and So while they're hiking, Rebecca talks about the importance of a flight plan. Like I mentioned earlier, prepare yourself for the spelunking. You can get disoriented, dehydrated, and if you think you know darkness, you don't. It is pitch black down there, which Doug and I we went up to Fantastic Caverns, and they're actually, during the ride, they shut off all the lights. And I mean, you cannot, like, your eyes will not adjust to that kind of darkness. It is terrifying. And whenever we went on that little trip, dude, I was a little stressed, even though we were in this tour guide type cart trailer thing, and there were tons of other people there. It's still so scary. And maybe it's because I've seen this film. I don't know. So they asked, how much further? And she's like, oh, we keep going till we hear the water and then follow up the mountain. So during this, they stumble across, to me, it looks like a dead elk or a huge, huge freaking deer. And this is so dumb. Sarah asked Sam, and Sam is apparently supposed to be like a doctor. She's going to school to be a doctor. She goes, what do you think did that? Girl, you're in the Appalachian Mountains and you don't know what could kill this freaking deer? Like, what? Like, there's predators everywhere. What do you mean? So they're like, come on, let's keep moving. And the scenery in this shot is beautiful. I mean, I would love to go hiking out there, just not here, not at this location. So they keep moving until they come up on this huge, massive opening in the earth. And Beth cracks me up. She says, I'm an English teacher. Oh my God, can I talk, please? I'm an English teacher, not fucking Tomb Raider. Which, same. My next question is, do they have enough rope? Like, if you have been spelunking or cave diving, please tell me how this works, because in all of these movies that I've ever seen, like The Fall, The Cave even, which I will cover later, and this film, like, is there enough rope? Okay. Like, once they pulley down into this opening, how do they get the rope back? I have questions. Like, how much rope do you need? And it's the fact too, also, you're going into a cave, spoiler alert, that is not Borum Caverns. So you have no idea what you're getting into. Is there enough rope? Like, I have questions, okay? So once they pull you down, everyone is just looking and observing the whole area, and they're like, it's breathtaking, right? So Sarah comes across these 4 faint red marks on a wall, and she puts her fingers up to it because it looks like they're like claw marks. But she just psychs herself out. She's like, nah, that's not what it is. Girl, those are handprints. What do you mean you're just going to be like, no, just forget it. No big deal. So she walks forward, and in like this opening, a pack of these bats or family of bats, whatever they're called, just fly out, scaring the shit out of her. And Juno runs over to her and is like, hey, you're good. Like, they're gone. Same though. I mean, if things are flying, especially like if there's bugs and shit, I gotta go. No. So for some reason, Sam asks, which way? Juno goes, down the pipe. That's the only way out. So we're going to, now I understand the title, we're going to descent into hell. What? Like, what do you mean only way out is down? There's a huge opening above my head. I can get out now, girl. What do you mean? Like, can we just hang out here? So how do you willingly go down pipe tunnels that you've never been through? Okay. Like, how do you do that? And Juno, like, I get it. You're an adventure girly. Fantastic. Love that for you. But you were putting your friends in danger. Okay. So they get to the next room. They light flares, and it's like a hall. I mean, I say hall, but I mean, it's huge. Okay. So like ballroom size hall, I guess. So they're out walking around and exploring on their own. And Sarah finds this chamber opening that she thinks she sees something. And it zooms into it to show water dropping. And then it's like kind of pooling, which I don't know. I need to watch it again because I don't see anything, but I feel like maybe there's like a shadow or something. But she shrugs it off and turns around, and blam, another jump scare. Juno scares her. She's like, hey, it's time to eat. So while they're chilling, they're all in this circle. Sarah's like, I'm not hungry. Like, I'm good. And Juno's like, hey, are you okay? And Sarah's kind of annoyed. And she's like, I'm not going to break. Like, she asked for this. She asked to go. And Juno extends her condolences and is like, hey, I'm sorry for leaving Scotland like so soon. And Sarah's like, it's all good. I gotta go. Because Juno, I feel like no one really likes her. But at the same time, they're long time friends. So while exploring, Sarah says she finds the next passage just by looking into a hole. Like, how do you know that's the next passage? Like, what do you mean? Is that the only opening? Because you were just looking at another one. Like, I don't know how this works. I will never know. And I never want to like go experience it firsthand. So everyone's packing up, and Rebecca pulls Juno to the side and is like, hey, this is kind of different than what the guidebook was saying. Becca, she did her research. She came prepared, let me tell you, because that's me. Like, if I go to a restaurant, dude, I'm looking at that menu before we even like leave the house because I need to know what I'm getting into, right? So Becca came prepared, and Juno's like, yeah, I don't trust books because they leave too much room for interpretation. What? A guidebook leaves too much room for interpretation. What does that even mean? And I'm sorry, but Becca just like brushes this off, and I could never, like, I'm questioning things. Like, no, dude, I went on a work trip, okay, back in August. And I mean, I printed off every single email. They sent us like maps, the itinerary, all that stuff. And I printed it off, and I even made like an extra copy. So I had one like in my purse and in my backpack, because I came prepared. hell no am I letting just one person have the guidebook. But then again, I mean, they trusted them. I could never. I'm sorry. I love my friends, but I'm coming prepared on my own. Okay. All right. So they go into the next opening and Holly goes first to the tunnel and we see her go through like water after a minute. Like it's like this little dip. Being wet and then covered in dirt and mud while still going through everything, just, I don't know. I don't like it. It seems to be a good trek, and man, it is snug. So while watching, you can't help but hold your breath a bit. At least I couldn't. I was just like, okay, she made it through. All right, cool. So next is Sam, Becca, Juno, Beth, and then Sarah's last. And Sarah has like an extra bag. And because that's my other thing during the scene is like, or just any kind of spelunking is you see them go in with all of these like dry bags that are packed full is like, how you, oh, I couldn't, dude, you gotta like push them forward or like drag them behind on your feet. I don't know, but like, how is this working? So while Sarah has some of the bags, she hears a noise before heading in. She kind of looks around, which is kind of strange. Beth can hear struggling behind her, and so she asks if Sarah's okay. Dude, she's not. She's not okay. She is stuck, and she is freaking out, man. So somehow Beth manages to, like, do a 360 in this opening, and it's weird, but, like, as a viewer, you kind of question it for a second, and you're like, oh, whatever, it's a movie. But it is weird how this scene kind of, how Beth gets back to Sarah. So mind you, okay, they're in this tunnel, this crawl space tunnel, and Sarah is, I mean, jam packed in this opening. And so Beth is trying to talk Sarah through it. Like, she tells her the worst thing that has already happened to her has happened. It's just a cave. She does not need to be afraid that, you know, her losing her husband and daughter, that is the worst thing. Okay. So then she tells her a joke, which I'm going to tell you guys because it cracks me up every time I hear it. How do you give a lemon an orgasm? You tickle its citrus. So there's some faint laughing, which you can tell is just, you know, she's just trying to get her to lighten up. So while moving a bit, you know, they're kind of centimeter moving, not inch moving. They're like barely moving. The cave starts grumbling and you're like, oh shit. Oh no. And Beth is like, move. And then it starts caving in and they escape. But now the tunnel is like collapsed. Okay. So they're like, oh shit, like we cannot go back that way. Everyone recovers from the dust and Rebecca reassures them, hey, according to the guidebook, the cave system has 3 ways in and out, which mind you, okay, so Rebecca just said there's 3 ways in and out. Earlier, when they drop into the opening and Sam's like, which way? Juno's like, oh, down the pipe. That's the only way out. Like, I mean, I get maybe I'm just digging too deep into that, but I would have questioned that too, that Becca's like, hey, no, there's 3 ways in and out of this cave. Juno explains that there's no point in bringing the book because she cannot confirm what Rebecca is saying. And it all clicks. This is not Borum Caverns. And the flight plan they booked isn't going to help if they don't check in because they're in the wrong cave. So Juno is trying to defend her self-righteousness of, hey, I wanted us to discover it for ourselves. And, you know, we wanted to put our name on it. And they are pissed. Love this scene because it's just like, oh, dude, I would have punched her. I would have straight up decked her in the face. Like, you brought us down here. But then I would have been mad at myself because I didn't come prepared, right? So Beth confronts Juno and is like, we trusted you. Think about Sarah. And Juno claps back. We all lost something in that crash. I'm sorry, what? Like, what do you mean we all lost something in that crash? So while this is going on, Sarah's kind of like, la-di-da, looking around with her flashlight. And it's cool because you only see like what the light is shining on, which is spooky, you know, because as the viewer, you're like, oh shit, what is she going to see? You know, what is the light going to hit? And she hears weird stuff. So they keep moving forward, and basically they come across this huge gap, like a massive drop to just pitch blackness. And they throw a flare to the next opening. Okay. So this is like a huge gap. So I'm trying to describe it the best way I possibly can. So you have one opening, and then you have a huge drop, and then across the way is the other opening. Okay. So they can't just walk across, and they have to rig a line to get to the other side. Rebecca seems to be the climber, and she says she's got 3 cams. Okay. And she needs 3 more. Beth lets them know that the extra supplies that they lost when her and Sarah were about to get pancaked in that tunnel earlier. And they're like, oh my God, are you serious? They can only be mad at themselves. All right. They can only be mad at themselves. So they have to space those 3 cams that they have out, which the cams are like what you basically put in between the cracks and hoist yourself up. Okay. If you watch any kind of rock climbing movie or, you know, anything like that, they wedge in there, and yeah. So the upper body strength that Becca has to set these up is insane. Okay. Like, she is straight up freehanding, climbing on this. Okay. So she's dangling above this huge opening that you have no idea what's at the bottom of it. Okay. There's no telling what's down there. So she is trying to set up these 3 cams. And whenever she gets to the last one, it's like this old, I don't want to say ancient, but this old climbing piece. I mean, from probably like the 1800s. Okay. Like, what? But she doesn't say anything. Okay. And during this, Juno, oh God, I could have punched her in the freaking face if I was like one of the other girls with her. She's like, come on, Becca. What are you waiting on, Becca? Could you shut up, man? Like, I am trying to go over this with just my upper body strength. Like, why didn't you do this then? Okay. Like, what? This is not encouraging. Okay. I would have screamed at her. So she gets that piece. She just clips her little carabiner into that 1800s old piece. Okay. Cause she's like, you know what? I'm not going to remove it, you know, but yeah, I would have straight up been like, look, Juno, this cave is not undiscoverable or undiscovered. So they rig a line so everyone can basically like shimmy across. And while Sarah and Juno are the last ones to go, Sarah asks her, is this about me or you? And Juno's like, well, I wanted us to claim it and name it after you. Sarah goes, or your name. And she just zips on out. She's gotta go. Okay. So Juno throws the rope back to him, and they're like, wait, what are you doing? Like, why are you throwing the rope back to us? Like, you need to get across. And this is the smart thing Juno does. She's like, well, we need to keep what we have. So now Juno's going to try to be a badass and unload the cams one by one. I think she's just trying to show off, whatever. But I get it. She drops, and whenever she drops, okay, so dramatic effect, she loses her grip, and all of a sudden she just starts to fall, and you're like, oh my God, kind of whatever, don't care, but I get it. Whenever she drops, though, the rope that the other girls are like holding to help support her goes straight through their hands, and Rebecca is the main one holding it. And so like rope burn just shreds them. So whenever she gets back to the other girls, Juno hands them the old climbing piece, and they're like, what does that even mean? Someone else has been here. But Juno says if they got out, they would have named it already. Cool. So you just clarified that whoever was here before did not escape and did not get out. So what am I supposed to do with that, Juno? What? So Becca's injured now. they're all stressed. I mean, you can feel the tension between all of them. They get to another room and they find cave drawings. And Juno's like, come on, guys, like, we don't have time for this. And it's like, dude, shut up, okay? Beth sees something on these drawings. And they're like Native American, like, drawings, okay? You see, like, animals and, you know, you see the mountain and, like, a sun. And she's like, look, there are 2 entrances to the cave. You see the mountain and you see, boom, boom, 2 entrances. So they all kind of get this hope, right? Well, the camera angle switches and it shows like a silhouette of something drooling. And let me tell you a little fun fact. The actresses had not seen any of the creatures yet. And this scene right here, they didn't even know that this was going to be like part of the scene. So, it's so creepy. Well, then they get to like this fork and they all start kind of panicking. And they're like, which way? We don't know where to go. They use a lighter to get, I guess, wind flow. And Holly sees like the lighter, the flame kind of flicker really hard. And she's like, I'm going in this way. And she starts running and she's like, I see daylight. And they're like, no, that's not daylight. Like, she slips and Juno tries to hold her hand, but ultimately, you know, it's like there's water dripping and shit, and she lets go. And Holly's shin decided to make an appearance. Her bone, she landed, I don't know, on her leg or what, but you pan in and we see Holly like at the bottom of this little hole, and you see the bone sticking out of her shin, and it's like, ugh. Bro, I would have thrown up. Like, that much pain. I've never been in shock, but I feel like that's what she went through. I would have thrown up. So they all go down to her, and Sam tries to make her comfortable and splints the leg, and she has to set the bone. During this, though, Sarah hears giggling, which is kind of throughout the film. You hear like very faint little giggles. I'm thinking that the pills that she left at the cabin, like, that is something like, it's, I don't know, like antipsychotic or what, but I feel like those kind of helped her. So anyway, so she follows the giggling sound, which why? I mean, you're in a freaking cave like 5 miles down, but she finds this old like metal helmet, almost like 1800 type helmet. And she looks at it and she's like, weird, you know, like whatever. Back to Holly, they're setting the bone, and Holly is like, I hate you. You know, could not imagine what she's going through right now, but holy crap. Sarah sees a freaking ghostly body. Okay. So mind you, Sarah that's hearing the giggling and she's looking at the helmet. She then looks over and she sees like this small, pale looking thing in the distance. And she tries to, like, Juno meets her and she tries to tell Juno, like, I just saw someone, you know, maybe they can help us. And Juno's like, no, you're crazy, you know. And everyone's like, wait, what's going on? You know, because they hear the commotion. They're like, what is it? You know, we can't handle any more shit. And Sarah's like, I saw a man. No, girl, you did not see a man. If any of my friends, if we're in a cave, like 20 miles deep, and one of them's like, I saw a man, I'm out. I gotta go. Okay. So they're like, you gotta get your shit together, girl. So they get Holly limping out, and there ain't no way, dude. Her bone was straight up protruding out of that skin. I'm not a medical doctor, but I feel like there's no way she's limping out of there. So they crawl up this way, which that's another cool scene. And they're walking or crawling over all of these bones. Okay. And this room is just covered in bones of just animals. They decide they had brought a video camera, and they turn on the night vision, and they're like, what do you see? What is it? They're like, it's hundreds of decayed animals. So they're like, we don't know where to go. Like, where do we go? What is this? Well, Rebecca just starts screaming like, hello, is anybody there? And it's like, girl, what? And I get this. I'm on Juno's side. Juno's like, please, like, stop. You know, they try to quiet her, and the video camera pans over to Beth. And again, it's in the night vision, which is also just scary. And you see this giant, pale looking man type creature thing hovering behind her, and chaos just ensues. You see these creatures climbing walls, running past them, and it's like, what? And Sarah's like, I told you, I saw someone, you know, I told you. And Sam's like, that was not a human being, okay? Because this thing, like, stresses them out for a good minute, okay? Because it knocks them over, it runs away, and they're like, oh my God, like, what is going on? And like I said, this is where it pops off. So Juno's like, you know what? Fuck it. We're just picking a tunnel. Her and Sarah start storming to one of them, and you hear this screeching. And I love this scene because I'm like, yes, I relate to this. If I were in this situation, this would be me. So Juno and Sarah are walking towards this tunnel, and you hear this, and they look at each other, and they slowly start backing away like, nah. So then these creatures are kind of like circling them, and it's so stressful. So they quickly pick Holly up, and they just start running. Well, one of these creatures comes out, tackles them, knocks Juno and Holly over. A creature then jumps on Holly, bites her throat out, and Juno's trying to fight it off, but it crawls at her and like scares her, you know, because it's like, that's my food, like, go away. And everyone's running. Becca and Sam are gone. They're Audi 5000. Beth's chasing after Sarah. Sarah stumbles and falls down an opening and hits her light, and lights out for her. Okay. So then we're back to Juno, and Juno's like trying to fight one of these things off. Beth decides she's going to head back because she hears Juno fighting one of them. And it's a pretty feral, badass scene. So Juno grabs her climbing axe. She kills one. And I mean, it's just like visceral, you know, she's like, Juno's a badass in this sense, okay? But as a friend, she's shit. Well, okay, you got to think, you're in a stressful situation. You don't know what is going on. She's fight or flight mode, right? She's fight mode. Well, all of a sudden she hears a noise, and she swings whenever she turns around. But it's Beth. She had hooked the axe in the back of the neck, protruding through her throat. She didn't mean to. Bro, if you were coming up behind someone because they are fighting some fucking creature, why would you not be all like, Juno, I'm here to help? Or Juno, like, why would you not announce yourself? Or say something? You don't just sneak up on someone like that, especially whenever you just witnessed them kill this creature. Like, what? Beth tries to hold on to Juno, but Juno pulls away. I mean, she's upset. You can see the tears start forming. Beth then rips this necklace, this feather necklace that Juno has that she's wearing. She rips it, and she falls down. The music is so good during this scene. And then you hear the screeching, and Beth is reaching out for Juno, and she slowly backs away, trembling, and she's in tears. I mean, I get it. Like, oh shit, like she messed up. But like, come on, dude. Like, that's so shitty. So then we flash to Rebecca and Sam. They're gathering themselves together, and Sam's asking like, oh my God, where's everyone? Rebecca's like, it's okay. You know, they're sisters. So she's like trying to keep the younger one together. And then Rebecca pulls out this large green glow stick, and it's pretty cool lighting. We kind of see that a little bit more in the next few parts. Then we get a view from the night vision camera, and it's on Sarah's face. She wakes up, grabs the camera to see, like, because it's pitch black down there. She sees human skulls and bones, a wolf's head, and she's like, freaking out, which agreed. Then she hears a growl in the distance, so she hides in the corner, and she's still recording, but she's like, oh my God. And Holly's body drops down, scares the crap out of her, and you hear these feral animal type sounds. Dude, if I can, I'll play a clip because holy crap, it is terrifying. And these creatures are just going to town on Holly's body. You just kind of see like the silhouettes and like the blood, and you see Sarah kind of in the background holding the camera. And while she's watching through the lens, trying not to make a sound, she's like kind of like gagging. And one of the creatures hears her and starts crawling up to the camera. And you're like, oh my God. And she's being still. And the creature like screeches and screams into it. And it's just like, oh my God. So then we flash back. There's a lot of flashbacks or jump scenes from this. We go back to Becca and Sam, and they're hiding on this ledge, and the creature, a creature is closing in on them. It walks over their heads and do the stress because it's right on top of them. And it walks away. All of a sudden, Sam's freaking watch goes off. It's just this annoying beeping. She quickly hurries up, scrambles, takes it off, and this creature's running back to him. And that's when they realize, like, oh shit, it can't see, but obviously it can hear. So Juno is hearing the beeping, so she starts yelling for them. And Becca's like, dude, she's going to bring every single one of those creatures to her. And Sam's like, as long as it's not to me, like, I'm good. So they continue on, and a creature jumps down on Becca. They're trying to fight it off, and Juno is caught up to them and kills it. Pretty cool. She like breaks its neck. They investigate the monster, and Sam's like, they use sound to hunt. Cool. We already kind of figured that out. And they ask about the others, and Juno explains that they took Holly and that Beth is dead. She continues on by saying the climbing gear they found, she found markings that seem like they're showing the direction on the way out, but she's not leaving without Sarah. So now we're back to Sarah. She's exploring this graveyard massacre, and she's looking at Holly's body, and she decides she's going to make a torch using some items that are on her, which is pretty cool because she uses like carabiners and makes the flame. And then all of a sudden you hear this like this gasp, and it's Beth. And oh my God, like as best friends who are like sisters, Sarah's like, oh my God, like I've got to get you out of here. And Beth's like, Juno did this to me. Sarah's like, what do you mean? No, she didn't. Like she would never. And she hands her the necklace, and she's like, it's from Paul. And mind you, this girl's got like a hole in her throat, but yet she's still talking full sentences. Blows my mind. And whenever she reads the necklace, it says, love each day. And it just breaks Sarah. I mean, just, ugh. Because could you imagine discovering that and now your best friend's dying? So Beth's like, do not trust that bitch. Do not get out of here on your own. And she asks Sarah to do something really difficult, and she's like, don't leave me like this. So this scene, it's very emotional, but also it's terrifying at the same time. So of course Sarah respects her wishes, and after that, all of a sudden this little kid monster comes out, attacks Sarah, and she just fucking stomps on this little shit. Like, fuck them kids, man. And I love the shot after she gets done like stomping on it, because it's like, oh, it's disgusting. And then here comes the mom, and it's like a female creature because you see like long scraggly hair and gross. Well, she discovers that her kid's dead, and she attacks Sarah. And this is like the most iconic and best scene ever. I remember when this film first started, I guess the advertising for it, and they always had websites for films. I don't know if you guys remember this or not, but and I remember going on the website, and they would show like the pictures from the filming and this scene where she's in this pool of blood and it looks so disgusting. Like I could only imagine the smell, but the color and the visuals are just insane. And it's going to sound messed up, but it's gorgeous. Like the way that it looks. So they kind of fight in this pool of blood and she ends up like stabbing the mom creature in the face with the bone. It's just so cool. And she goes for the torch, but then stops because she hears another creature and he creeps up and is like hovering over her head, like hand on her head, and is like smelling around. And it's like, oh my God, the anxiety. Because I can't be still for very long, dude. So it kind of walks away and you just get this clip of Sarah's like piercing blue eyes. And I mean, her face is just covered in blood. And it is so awesome. And she's like, I'm done. She's full feral mode, like straight up, fuck this shit, right? So she fucking just kills this creature, comes up behind it. Then we go back to Juno, Becca, and Sam, and they make it back to that gap area, like where you're on one side and there's that huge opening and then you have to cross to the other. And the creatures are just swarming after them, and Sam panics. She hooks up to the top of the thing. She's going to try to get across by herself. Becca and Juno are like begging her to come back, like, please don't. And a creature all of a sudden is on the ceiling. And oh, it's so sad because Becca is like such a sweet character. I mean, you don't know her that well, but she's so awesome. But this creature basically like slices her throat with its hand, and she's like, you know what? You're going down with me. And she grabs it and she stabs it. And whenever she does, it's the coolest shot. She falls back, like a back bend, and the blood is just pulling from her throat onto her face. And Becca and Juno are like crying. But don't worry, it doesn't last long, because all of a sudden Becca gets got. Creature comes up behind her, starts killing her, and then Juno's like, I gotta go. So she jumps in to this huge crevice, not knowing what's going to be at the bottom. And it's pretty much like a huge pool of water. And so after that, she starts crawling out and she runs into Sarah. Sarah is still covered in blood. And Juno is like, what happened to you, man? Like, what? And Sarah's, she's a different person. Okay. She's gone. She's like, so where are the others? And Juno's like, they didn't make it. And she's like, what about Beth? She's like, she didn't make it either. And she's like, well, did you see her die? And Juno's like, yeah, I saw her die. And Sarah already knows, no, you didn't, bitch, because I just had to kill her. Like, I just had to kill my best friend. So Sarah just like kind of brushes it off, makes it seem like she brushes it off, and they keep going. And then they get to a room that's filled with like 3 or 4 monsters, and it pops off. So you have Juno, who has like the pickaxe, and she is, slicing, dicing, and Sarah is full blown just animalistic feral mode. She's using her teeth, she's using her hands, and it's wild because you see 2 totally different people, like with their, I guess, badass modes. And I'm rooting for Sarah at this point, right? Well, at the end of the battle, the boss fight, Sarah and Juno are kind of facing each other like, cool, they just did this. And Juno's like, hell yeah, girl power. And all of a sudden, Sarah drops the necklace out of her hand. And it's dangling there. And Juno's like, oh shit, she knows. Because it's the necklace that Bev gave her that she pulled off Juno's freaking neck when she stabbed her in the throat. That's from Paul. So it's all full circle. And before Juno can say anything, it's like slow motion. Sarah grabs the axe and just whips it into Juno's leg. And just the look of shock on Juno's face. Like, I mean, you can't blame her, dude. You cannot blame her that she cheated. She stole her man from her, right? Then brings them to this cave that they had no business being in. And then fucking like lies to her about her best friend dying. You know, she can't even own up to her shit. So Sarah's gone. Bye. I know the way out. Well, while Sarah's running, she trips, she falls, and all of a sudden light starts hitting her face. And the camera pans out and you see this mountain of bones, of carcasses just leaning up to this little opening of light. And you know it's the exit. And she runs. And it's such a cool shot because you just see her like, she's not so much as like wild anymore. She's more just like, I gotta go, gotta get out. And she runs out. And the moment she gets out of the opening, she takes this huge deep breath, which I don't blame her because I'm sure it smells awful down there. Like, ugh. It's so gross. Couldn't imagine the smells. No. And I mean, she is running back to the woods, which, dude, if it were me though, I'd get lost. Like on the way back, I have no sense of direction. I mean, I'd be running. I'd be getting as far as I possibly could. I'd probably be going in the wrong direction. But she's running back through the woods and the forest. She gets back to the vehicles. And dude, she is hightailing it out of there. Like she is hitting bumps. And I'm surprised she didn't like flip because, dude, she's driving like a maniac. But who can blame her? She gets back to the highway. And I mean, trying to get as much distance as possible. And she's like looking in the mirrors. And Sarah's like, oh my God, you know, did this really just happen? So she pulls over and all of a sudden, you know, she's crying and it's emotional because it's like, holy shit, I just went through all of this. Like, it's like her adrenaline's finally worn off. And a huge semi truck just flies past her, honks the horn, scares the shit out of her. She throws up, which same. I would definitely do the same too. And then the camera pans into the vehicle and you see Juno sitting next to her, like the ghost of Juno. And Sarah screams, and that's the end of the film. So, ta-da! Personally, I don't care for that ending right there because it's like, really? I mean, see what I mean by the supernatural effect? That's why it's kind of confusing. But this is the American ending, though, of her escaping and getting out. Even though we don't know what happens after, whenever she sees the ghost of Juno and she screams and it's in credits. But the UK version, when she falls at the pit where all the bones are, like that lead up to the exit, she actually wakes up and sees her daughter with like a birthday cake and candles and stuff. And like, okay, you think she's dreaming or whatever, which she's hallucinating. And then the camera pans out and she's just staring at her torch. And she's just in this blackness. The only light is just coming from her torch, from her flames. And you hear and start kind of seeing the creature start closing in on her. And that's how the UK version ends, which I think is 10 times better. But of course, Americans have to have happy endings. So that was the 2005 film, The Descent, directed by Neil Marshall. I hope you guys enjoyed my commentary. Still one of my favorites. I love it. Please leave me any reviews that you may have, anything you like and disliked, and also any suggestions for future movies I should cover. I'd love to continue doing this, and I hope to talk to you guys soon. Bye.